So, and since it is Independence Day, we're probably gonna have a late crowd. Welcome. Good to see you, Lynn, all the way over from the other side of the planet. And of course, Lindsay from this side of the planet, right down the street. All right, good to see you all. Happy Independence Day to all Americans that may be tuning in right now. If you can take a break from the barbecue or the pool party or whatever you're doing. Tis the 4th of July, 5th for Lynn over there across the date line, but big day here. We're going to talk about that a little bit. One thing I forgot to mention last week, I mentioned we were going to be finishing up the Bob Proctor book on our book study group. You Were Born Rich. Turns out that's tonight, and tonight's the 4th. And so everybody's doing fireworks here in the States. So we're going to go ahead and suspend that until next week. We will conclude the final two chapters. So chapters 9 and 10, we will conclude that next week on the 11th. And then I do want to announce, though, our next book. So for those of you who are eager to dig into our next book, that shall be Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. I think you can pick it up on Kindle for $1. So there's that. Go ahead and grab that. We're going to start that in 2 weeks because we're going to be finishing Bob's book next week. All right. So good stuff. Today I want to talk with you a bit about a big decision, a huge decision. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I've got a piece of, I'm going to get that book study group off the calendar for tonight. Go ahead and share my screen so you can see what I see. Napoleon Hill's classic book, Think and Grow Rich. The 7th Step Towards Riches, Decision. So he wrote a whole chapter on decision. I know Lynn is reading Integrity is Everything right now. And there's a chapter on decision, right? Lynn, you just started reading my book? Yeah, okay, great. So this is a big thing, right? I mean, multiple authors have written chapters on just this one thing. In fact, I've got a whole book that has been rattling around in my mind just on the concept of decision making. Because when we look at how we get the results that we get in our lives or fail to do so, really comes down to my best thinking and how I apply that into the decisions that I make and the actions that I take. So anyway, in this chapter, which we've reviewed and I've quoted excerpts from several times, and this is the original text, by the way. This is not, the mass market paperback where some editor decided to cut out a bunch of things that I find terribly relevant. But in the original text, there is, starting on page 3, at least here in the Kindle version. Is it page 3? Characteristics of people. Here we are, page 4. Okay, great. So, of course, on Kindle, the page numbers don't matter. It's just depending on how big of a font you're using. But hopefully you all can see this. He's talking about freedom or death on a decision. So when and this is very appropriate, obviously, for today, how auspicious, right, that it's the 4th of July. Let me get my microphone going here. Okay, good. Hopefully you can hear me better now. I had the microphone out. But he talks here about some decisions that were made by people who are very well known throughout history. Here's Lincoln, all right, his decision to issue his famous Proclamation of Emancipation, right? We have Socrates' decision to drink the poison rather than compromise his personal belief. That's interesting. Okay, we got General Robert E. Lee parting way with the Union, took up the cause of the South. And people can have opinions on good, bad, right, or wrong, but that was a bold decision. But the greatest decision of all time, as far as any American citizen is concerned, and this has had far-reaching ramifications, not just if you're in the United States of America, okay? But this decision was reached in Philadelphia on July 4th, 1776, when 56 men signed their names to a document which they well knew would bring freedom to all Americans or leave every one of the 56 hanging from the gallows. So there's freedom or death. right? So here we have this, we could say an overreaching, tyrannical, government entity, the crown, right? And you guys got to do this and that. You're colonies of us, and we control you. Give us your money, but you're not getting representation or anything. And so you commoners, you peasants, right? So this is like the right of kings, and now, granted, the Magna Carta was already a thing, right? That happened in England. So there was, the fact that nobles or whatever could have, rights. Prior to that, it was the right of kings, right? And queens, I suppose, and whoever was in their favor. I'm sure there was a good amount of, nepotism going on, whatever, well, I'm going to do for you. And then you kiss my butt, and, I'm going to give you extra boons or whatever, little extra land, which of course I could take back, right? So this is like the totalitarian and arbitrary way that the world worked for the most part. Of course, there was, Greece and Rome when they experimented with a republic, right, and having representation and senators and stuff like this. But the idea that everyone has rights, well, that was a stretch, right? And so we had now for all of us here we are in the 21st century. It seems pretty obvious that you have rights, and maybe to me, maybe that's to me because I have I was born into a constitutional republic, and there's a Bill of Rights, and it's just enumerating these things which should be self-evident, but they need to be enumerated nonetheless to restrict the government from doing what governments do, which is taking away rights from people, being tyrannical and absolute power and blah blah blah. So back to the idea. Here are these guys, 56 of them, who said no, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be self-governing. We could do this, we could do this on our own, and we're not going to be colonies anymore. And the crown could go be the crown, but we're not doing the crown thing. Okay. Basically, they signed their own death warrant. I'm going to pull up the book. Okay. So this is, now you've all heard of this famous document. Okay. But many may have not have, my goodness, I'm stumbling on my words today. You may have heard of this famous document, but may not have drawn from it the great lesson in personal achievement. It's so plainly taught. Personal achievement, which is the majority of what we talk about here in this group, right, is personal achievement. And this is a book on, becoming rich through the power of your own thought, the mastery of procrastination. That's interesting. Decision is the mastery of procrastination. Okay. So we could put stuff off and continue to, labor under, whatever conditions or considerations we may have about, should I or shouldn't I, which also takes up our energy. Or we could just get on with it and overcome the procrastination through decision. So there's a couple highlights in here that I want to mention for you. And it goes through a lot of the, here's Lord Cornwallis and their Valley Forge, and they're doing the thing. You can read the book for yourself. Okay. But we know still less of that intangible power, which ensured us freedom long before Washington's armies reached Yorktown. So what he's getting at here, and this is a big decision, all right, but it wasn't something they did on their own. It wasn't, while we're talking about individual success, we're talking about you becoming, prosperous and scaling up your businesses and, living your best life. And while that is the theme that I have going through my mind and my intention for all of you, everyone who listens to this and participates, it's not something, obviously, it's not something we're doing alone. Whenever he mentions power, okay, I want you to think about the power of the mastermind, which is one of the other chapters, because this book fits together like puzzle pieces. Okay. There are, what he said in that chapter, not this one, but in that chapter, is that great power can be accumulated by no other method, by no other principle, but the power of the mastermind. All right. So I want you to think of something like this. Think of it like a battery. And we may have covered this before. So I'll be brief. So if you've got a battery, which is a source of power, right? A battery has potential power. If you look at a battery in any device or in your car or whatever, there's a positive and a negative pole. Okay. You can't just have a positive polarity or just a negative polarity. Okay. You must have both. There must be a complete circuit. So it must be two. Bare minimum must be two. I want you to also think about another big decision. Okay. So we're going back before this whole, July 4th, 1776 thing. Let's go back, another, 1740 years to, here's this guy, Jesus, and he's got these, disciples, and, they nailed the Jesus guy up. And then, these disciples go out 2 by 2 into the world and, carry that message. Right. So does that sound like a bold decision? Did they do it alone? 2. So the power of the mastermind fits beautifully into our ability to make and execute these significant decisions, big consequential decisions. There's maybe a best way to say it is there's courage in numbers. Right. So, and again, this isn't an argument for good, bad, right, or wrong. Okay. What this guy did, or Robert Lee, or whoever, right? This is just an issue of actual psychology. Like, how do people who are social creatures, how do they make bigger and bolder decisions? Some of us are engaged in business, and taking risks, let's say, that are above our comfort level. Anybody can go get a job and hopefully keep a job. Well, let me say anybody with, nominal, 100 IQ and whatever, and, some degree of, motivation to do so, rather than just sit there and, live on the dole or whatever. So you can go and you could do something productive as an individual, and yet you're going to engage, let's say that was your path, right? You're going to engage in being the provider of some service for an hourly wage or a salary or whatever, providing some service. Again, it's not just you anymore. Here's the corporation, here's the coworkers, here's, even if it's just, here's a one-man show, he runs an auto shop or something, and you're going to go be a mechanic. Okay. So there's still 2. And even if it was a one-man show, running the auto shop, well, there's still a customer, right? Otherwise, there's no power. At least 2. So to be able to execute a decision, like I am going to run an auto shop and it's just going to be me, well, there's got to be somebody's car to fix, right? So power happens in numbers. So we can have example after example of people who play, let's say, a small game because they consider it's just them, and the decision to play a bigger game, which would be unreasonable, uncomfortable, hey, wow, risk, right? But what is the whole definition of entrepreneurship? An entrepreneur is someone who takes higher than normal risk for the purpose of business and profitability. That's by definition what an entrepreneur is. So the word risk is right in there. And so now we're going to venture off. We're going to go start some online business, or we're going to go do something we've never done before. And it's just going to be me, a solopreneur. That's what a lot of people do. Does that sound powerful? Well, no. The self-determined aspect of that, yeah, sure, it comes down to an individual. We're going to cover that here in just a minute. The decision comes down to an individual, but in partnership and in how could we say it? Not necessarily like a business partnership, but where we have others who are sympathetic with our purposes, that we enroll, enlist, recruit, whatever. There is power in numbers, right? And again, this doesn't have to mean that you're right. This doesn't mean you're right. We could see people right now, and not just here in the United States, but throughout, the world who are out, in numbers. So they've got the courage of numbers, begging for exactly what would destroy them. Low IQ, but the confidence of numbers. Okay. Little understanding, little prudence, can't really see ahead, but We want this. We want this. Okay, doesn't mean you're right. I mean, how many people drink themselves to death? How many people have a demand on, we must have alcohol, or, we must drug ourselves and whatever. So it doesn't mean you're right or that it's good for you. But when you show up at the bar, and hopefully you don't, but when somebody shows up at the bar and there's agreement there, because look, you're not the only drunk in the place, confidence in numbers. And that's a decision, obviously, because we see the action, right? It could be a destructive decision in this case, but we could see the action demonstrating that the decision was made. To make a different decision, to say, you know what, now of my own accord, I leave this environment of drunkenness, debauchery, whatever, and I go into a new direction. Is that done alone? No, it's not. It's not, right? There's such a thing as receiving counsel from others and being in fellowship with other people who are, living sober and all this, right? So again, it's never just you. So back to the idea of the employee, to make a bigger decision, I'm going to go ahead and start that business. We must, I think, if we intend to do something more than just say, oh, I tried and I failed, right? We must ally ourselves with other people who are sympathetic with our purposes. Power of the mastermind, great power can be accumulated by no other principle. There it is. Don't do it alone. Yes, self-determined decision, but immerse yourself in that environment where the success you seek is happening. It's coming to be. In fact, it's been demonstrated. You're not the first. Back to our highlights, because this is really rich. So there was a power at play. Okay. It says here also, important changes usually begin in the form of a definite decision in the minds of a relatively small number of people. So when I say go ally yourself with others who are sympathetic with your purposes, don't assume that means there's a gaggle of them waiting at your door, or that necessarily they're the easiest thing in the world to find, and that you're going to just be surrounded by people who are in total agreement with you. No, okay, relatively small. In this case, it was 56. Which caused, the birth of a nation, which became the world's greatest superpower based on principles. Okay. Then from there, okay, other people were enrolled, and there's, a bigger and bigger effort going on, and counter efforts. Understand there's efforts and there's counter efforts. So then how many people, if you wanted to bring this down into, hey, look, I'm looking to make big decisions and do big things. Okay. Well, how big? How big? Remember what he said there. There's definite decision. Important changes usually begin in the form of a definite decision in the minds of a relatively small number of people. A definite decision, not a vague idea, not a whimsical decision, not an undefined or indefinite or infinite decision, but a definite decision. So we've got to decide what is the target. And this, again, is done by a relatively small group of people. And this is another good reason why, if you're looking to make big advancements, it's good to seek counsel from people who have gone where you think you'd like to go, to illuminate, here's the pitfalls. And also here's what you think you want, but let me tell you about, here's the rest of the story. Here's the dark underbelly and whatever, right? So you can kind of get some wisdom from someone who has some. I mean, that's a good thing, right? Solomon was all about seeking wisdom. Solomon had counselors, people who were smarter than he was at certain things. And therefore he got to be the wisest guy in the room, or in the realm, or in the universe, because he surrounded himself with counselors who knew stuff that he didn't. These guys who did the declaration thing, right? So they weren't all holding a mirror up to each other. They all had a common purpose, but they had different attributes, right? They had different strengths and weaknesses, right? Some were fighters, right? Some were diplomats, right? They weren't dummies, okay, but they definitely had different strengths and weaknesses. So then, if we're going to make a definite decision, then what we've got to do, and I'm experiencing this right now in my life, okay, what we've got to do is define what is the outcome that we want unequivocally, without any more Q&A. I'm not confused about it. I know exactly what I friggin' want. I shall not be denied that. I'm definite about it. I am not vague in any way. And once we've got that, and we've got an other, I have a bit of an unfair advantage with this one because I've got my secret weapon, my wife, right? I mean, we get talking about stuff. We meet every day on business. We meet every day, which is a good practice, right? To talk about, all right, so you're doing this, I'm doing that. All right, what's the outcome we're looking for here, there, right? And if sometimes, one or both of us can get a little bit sideways, distracted, this, or, maybe too much attention on that, or like emotional stuff or whatever, we can get back to present time and what's the objective. This is a very valuable thing to do. Again, there's at least two of us in that mastermind, okay? And we're not vague on where we're going. So definite decision, relatively small group of people. Relative, what does that mean? That means relative, right? Relative to what? Well, we could say, if you're running a company, a relatively small group of people, let's say you had 100 employees, a relatively small group of people could be 5. Okay, let's say you're running an empire or something, right? A relatively small group of people could be 500. So relatively small. And everybody needs to know their post. Back to the text. I think this is the last quote I'll give you out of this. But I'm hoping this is going to help you make bigger decisions and stick with them. Mark well this incident. It was the beginning of the organization of the far-flung power destined to give freedom to you and to me. The mastermind had already been organized. So back here, what's he referring to? He's referring to, here's Richard Henry Lee and Samuel Adams and everything that's going on here as they got to the point where they're going to make this decision. The friendly cooperation for the betterment of the colonies of British America. So to have come up with that conclusion, right? We're talking about making decisions, making big decisions here. To be able to come up with that, they counseled with each other, they corresponded, they had secret meetings, they did what they had to do, and they came to the same conclusion. In other words, there was agreement there in this relatively small group of people. There was an agreement about a definite decision, and that's what we're going to do. And there's no turning back. I now sign my name, and I could lose everything. But I shall not be denied. Liberty or death, right? As the saying goes. Now, how many of us, I'm done sharing the quotes here, but how many of us look at our goals, our purposes, how we spend our time, our decisions about what we're doing with our life? How many of us look at that with the correct order of magnitude, with the gravitas, right? Of I'm trading my life for this. When I and this may sound silly, okay, but when I see somebody, just flipping through TikTok videos ad infinitum, okay, I'm thinking, you're trading your life for that. Okay, if you say so, all right, that's what you want to trade your life for. We could say, well, perhaps that's not as destructive as the drunkard who drinks himself to death. Okay, but I think about the amount of time that I've spent executing my decision to allow others to program me, right? I'm talking about people that watch TV a lot and social media and whatever, right? So that's programming, right? So like television programming, there's a reason it's called programming, in case you didn't know that, right? So you're being programmed. And so you only have so much attention that you can spend, and you will every day. Okay, here's your 24 hours worth. and you spend it, you can't save it. Okay. And so you're going to spend there and spend there and spend there. So here's the big decision that you could make. Okay. And we've gone through this before, so it's not new data, but we could actually track that. We could actually quantify. Remember, we talked about a definite decision, not vague. Okay. Definite. We can quantify definitely how much time, therefore attention, am I trading? And I've only got so much. Am I trading for this item, for that item? This item could be, eating food. Okay, well, we got to do that. I know it's an inconvenience. It's terrible, but you got to eat the food. Okay, so it costs me, a half hour a day to feed my body. Is that did you spend that well? Yeah. Okay. You eat 3 meals a day. You take 10 minutes, whatever. I eat really fast. Okay. Some of you are laughing. Okay. So whatever the expenditure is, it's half hour, just, collect it up, and it could vary. I get it. Right. Oh, we're going to have a fancy dinner. Oh, we're just going to eat a yogurt on our way out the door. Hey, whatever. Right. So add it up. All right. It's all valid. You spent it. You did. Okay. So add it up. Driving, right? Drive the kid to the place to play the game, right? You bought that. It cost you a half hour, or, if you're somewhere like Los Angeles, 3 hours a day of driving to go like 4 miles. That's real, by the way. That's real. Although nowadays, who knows, right? We're paying like $8 a gallon for gas over there. Anyway, so that's an expenditure. The business. Okay, so how much time do I spend? How much attention do I spend on building this or that business? You may be engaged in multiple businesses, and here's one that that a lot of times people don't consider. And we've talked about this. It's been a few months, but we talked about the difference between high leverage and low leverage activities. So in terms of investing or spending time and attention into my businesses, there are things which are expedient, like go close the sale right now to make money right now. Okay, so that's expedient. And yet, once that one's over, okay, that's it. Go do another one if you want to make more money. So that is a low leverage activity. That's akin to trading attention and time for recompense money, right? So that's a pretty linear exchange, let's say. High leverage activities are those which quite often are not as expedient. There's a bit of delayed gratification with that, but they're very rich, because now that could be like setting up automations and creating content and doing things that are not going to pay you right now, but will bear fruit in the long run. And there is going to be a long run. I mean, assuming you keep feeding your body, right? You're going to keep showing up on the planet. Okay, so then what about tomorrow, right? So now we're thinking more prudently. And if we can find a balance there, because we're spending that attention, we can find a balance between expedience and prudence, right? Instant gratification, delayed gratification, low leverage, high leverage, right? We do that. These are definite decisions that we could make. And like I said before, a lot of times, you don't do this stuff on your own. I had my business meeting this morning with my secret weapon, and we were talking about which items are most important to get done for this next month, right? So it's in July, right? Which are the things that have to be done so that we can do the other things, because we got big plans, okay? And so my habitual way of, and I shared this today as well, my habitual way of thinking and making decisions is I go close some sales. Yeah, hold on a second. We don't have to go close sales right now. These other high leverage things need to be done, and then we can get to those other opportunities later. But these are the things without having that foundation, we can't get the other guy who's designing the site. And anyway, so there's more people involved than just me. Okay, so let's get those prerequisites in place before you go handle those other things that may seem like what you instinctively want to do. You see, a lot of times we will do what's habitual, because it's habitual, obviously, and it's comfortable. We will, like the person who watches, 5 hours of television a day, right? Are they sitting there thinking deliberately, I decide that I shall now watch 5 hours? No, they're not. They're not. They're just habitually doing it because it's comfortable. I would say that my habitual way of just engaging in expedient work, instant gratification kind of stuff, I'd say that's more resourceful, but it's not as prudent, right, as doing the hard thing, which is learning this new system, putting together the machinery to create the leverage, right? It's delayed gratification, right? But what happens if I don't do it? Is anybody here getting younger? No. Okay. So unless we're looking, except Lindsay, right? So unless we're looking to never get off the treadmill, you damn well better put in something of leverage, something where you could make money while you sleep, have enterprise and investment and other things working for you. I mean, think about that. Think about where you have, not just you working, but money working. Now you're not spending that attention, and you only have so much, not in a linear exchange, time for money and all this, right? So now you've got your attention going elsewhere onto, I don't know, maybe some project you're looking to do. Like these guys were signing declarations of independence and stuff, right? I mean, I guess they were still tilling the fields and whatever, but, a lot of farmers and stuff, but we've got other things we could put our attention on. When we've got the farm thing handled, now we can go ahead and create a country or whatever, right? So consider that you only have so much attention. So the biggest decision of all, I'm going to end off with this. Having discussed everything we just talked about, the biggest decision that you can make is where you're willing, in the short term and long term, where you're willing to invest your attention. We become what we think about. According to Earl Nightingale, that's the strangest secret in the world. We become what we think about. So the punchline to all this is, what are you thinking about? From the moment you wake up until all the way to the moment you wake up again, because there's also the nighttime stuff where the thing you end off on, right? And then that subconsciously, right, you're sleeping, but still there's still mental activity, something's happening, right? So it never ends. So if we could be deliberate, if we could start our day, each day, with a big decision, this day, I shall allocate my time as such. I shall think on these things. I shall neglect, reject, avoid, ignore the distractions, the diversions, the whatever. And it doesn't mean you never take a break. Okay. It is not John with his whip. All right. So yeah, you get some balance there too. But I think most often, probably none of us have to schedule in diversions. Like now I shall have a diversion. And it's on my calendar. Oh shit, I'm late. I got to go be diverted. Actually, Mozart, this guy was such a genius that anybody ever heard, of course you all have heard the song Ein Kleinnachtmusik, a little night music. Then, right? Everybody's heard that freaking song. That was one of his diversions. It's actually, if you get like a collection of Mozart music, there's the divertimenti, the diversions. That was one of them. He just wrote that for fun. Like, who gives a shit? All right. So when you're at that level, maybe you schedule in diversions. But right now, maybe you schedule in some high leverage activity. Maybe you just decide this day shall go the way I intend based on my known goals and targets and purposes. And then you can have boundaries. You can say no to that which is willing to impinge upon that. You could turn off the bing bong, social this and that, and 10 million notifications. Of course, if your kid needs you, I get it. You got to have a bit of spontaneous, flexibility as well. A lot of parents here, Okay. But what could you get done? What could you put in place if you weren't so distracted? This is the number one thing that has been cited as corporate inefficiency. What's the number one thing that lowers the profits in such and such corporation? And survey says distractions, distracted employees. It's a big decision to be on purpose more often than you're not, right? To spend well that finite amount of attention that you have. I want to acknowledge and thank everyone here for spending 36 minutes of your day with me right now, because you could have been doing something else. There's kitten videos. There's, all kinds of more entertaining things. Gilligan's Island reruns. Yes? No? Okay. Any thoughts on this? You guys got any thoughts? Here, it's my microphone. Get it right out of the frame. There it is. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? I got Catherine, Edward, Lindsay, Mandy, Lynn. Good to see you all. Happy Independence Day to our American friends once again. Lindsay, please.
Okay, yeah. It's like what you said before. You can do things that are important or things that are urgent with the spontaneity. And I love the fact that you said, back when program scheduling, I actually had done a post. Do you remember back? This is in the 80s when I was a kid. But do you remember when that came before commercials? Now back to not only is that blatant, but regularly scheduled programming. What the hell? I mean, really? And people never thought anything about it. It's just regularly program you.
Sure.
Damn, that's something. But yeah, I just don't watch it anymore.
Right. Well, innocent enough, right? I mean, one definition of programming is, here's the program, here's the scheduled events, right? All right, I get it. But in more modern times, I mean, go ahead and turn on mass media. Are you being programmed? Oh, no question about it. Right.
Yeah, don't think on those things.
Yeah.
It's set a time, scheduled, high integrity. This is going to take me toward my goal, and do that. It does. Yeah.
Thank you, Lindsay. I've never seen your kitchen before. So.
Oh, really?
No, I do. Wow, that's a first. I've only known you for like 5 years, and I just got to see.
You've never seen my kitchen? Yeah, it's. I'm the only one that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, deliberate programming or the abandonment of. So, thank you, Lindsay. All right. Anybody else got some thoughts on this? A big decision, or is there a big decision that you've been considering? But, there's a sacrifice involved. I'd have to say no to all this other stuff to do this. That's the position that I've been in recently. Okay. Big changes. Anybody, any other thoughts on this? Okay. I'm not seeing any other hot mics or hands. So I'm going to go ahead and end off. Again, we are suspending book study group tonight. We will conclude next week because I'm going to be out with my family watching fireworks. Because it's the 4th, right? And so we're going to conclude Proctor's book next week, chapters 9 and 10, You Were Born Rich. And then we're going to get right into Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie, which I've never read. I read his How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I thought was okay. But this book has been recommended 3 times in a week. So we're going to go down that road. Hopefully it's good. All right.